I wasn't supposed to be home that early. The plan was simple. Emily had her girls' night out, and I'd catch up on some work, maybe watch a movie, then call it a night. But my meeting got canceled, and instead of sitting at the office, I decided to surprise her. Walking through the front door, I immediately knew something was off. The house was quiet, too quiet. No music, no TV. Her phone was charging on the kitchen counter, buzzing with unread messages. I followed the faint sounds coming from upstairs. Soft laughter. I climbed the steps slowly, heart hammering in my chest. Bedroom door half open. Emily, my wife of 6 years, sprawled across the bed, fully naked. She wasn't alone. Jason, our neighbor, shirtless, his jeans half undone, kissing her neck as she moaned under him like she didn't have a husband who was supposed to be at work. I didn't make a sound. I stood there, watching for a solid 5 seconds, frozen. Then Emily noticed me. Oh shit. She shoved Jason off her, scrambling to cover herself with the sheets. Jason jumped back like he'd seen a ghost, practically falling off the bed. Matt, wait. Emily started, holding out a hand as if that would somehow calm me down. I didn't wait. I turned around and walked right back down the stairs. Emily came flying down the stairs after me, barely managing to wrap herself in a robe. Matt, stop. Just wait a second. I kept walking, straight to the kitchen. She grabbed my arm, nails digging into my sleeve. It's not what you think. I spun around, ripping my arm free. Not what I think. I snapped, glaring at her. You had Jason's tongue down your throat in our bed, Emily. Enlighten me. What the fuck am I supposed to think? Jason hovered awkwardly at the top of the stairs, fully dressed now, but looking like he wanted to disappear into the wall. Matt, man, Shut the fuck up, Jason. I growled without even looking at him. Emily's eyes narrowed, suddenly switching from panic to annoyance. Look, don't be so dramatic. We were just messing around. I laughed coldly, stepping closer until I was practically in her face. Messing around? She smirked. I mean, maybe you could watch next time, she purred, running a finger down my chest. Some couples do that, you know. I grabbed her wrist, holding it away from me. I'm not some guy on the internet you can cuck, Emily. Her eyes flashed with something, amusement, maybe even excitement. Relax, Matt. It's just sex. You're overreacting. Jason started inching toward the stairs, clearly sensing the tension. I caught his movement in the corner of my eye. Go, I said without looking at him. Before I put your head through the fucking wall. He didn't need to be told twice. Jason bolted, front door slamming behind him. Emily rolled her eyes. You didn't have to scare him off. I stared at her, gripping the edge of the counter to stop my hands from shaking. You're unbelievable. She shrugged, leaning against the counter like she hadn't just tried to fuck the neighbor. You're the one who's never around, she muttered, arms crossed. My blood boiled. So, this is my fault? Emily shrugged. Maybe if you put more effort into us, I wouldn't need to find it somewhere else. I took a slow breath, swallowing the rage climbing up my throat. I'm filing for divorce, I said coldly, meeting her gaze. She didn't even flinch. Instead, Emily smirked. Go ahead, but you know I'll bleed you dry. I stared at her, realizing something I hadn't fully grasped until now. She wasn't sorry, not even a little, and that was her biggest mistake. Emily didn't follow me when I left. I grabbed my keys and walked out, needing to get away from her before I said or did something I couldn't take back. I drove without a destination, looping through side streets until I ended up in the parking lot of a shitty dive bar on the edge of town. 2 drinks in, my phone buzzed. Emily, are you seriously pouting at a bar right now? Emily, come home, Matt. Let's talk like adults. I stared at the screen, whiskey burning the back of my throat. She had no idea how far gone I already was. Me? There's nothing to talk about. Her reply was immediate. Emily, oh, stop being dramatic. You weren't supposed to be home. It's not like I planned for you to catch us. I laughed bitterly, gripping the phone so tightly I thought it might snap in half. Me, you think that makes it better? I finished my drink and left. But I didn't go home. Not yet. It was nearly midnight when I finally pulled into the driveway. The lights were still on. Emily was waiting on the couch, legs crossed, a glass of wine balanced delicately in her hand. Did you have fun? She asked, not bothering to look up from her phone. I dropped my keys on the counter, staring at her. You're acting like nothing happened. She smiled faintly, sipping the wine. Because nothing did happen. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You were naked, Emily. With Jason. She set the glass down with a soft clink, finally meeting my eyes. And if I'd fucked him, she challenged. What then? Would you leave me? I didn't answer. Her lips curled into a smirk. No, you wouldn't. You'd stay right here, pretending like you could handle it. But deep down, she stood, sauntering toward me until we were inches apart. You like knowing other men want me. I clenched my fists, heart pounding louder than I wanted to admit. Emily traced her fingers along my chest, tilting her head. Admit it, Matt. You'd rather watch than leave. I grabbed her wrist, pushing her hand away. You don't know me at all. She laughed softly, brushing past me toward the stairs. Keep telling yourself that. And just like that, she disappeared upstairs, leaving me standing there in the dark. I barely slept that night. Emily didn't even bother pretending to care. I heard the soft chime of her phone buzzing long after she went to bed. Probably Jason. Maybe someone else. I didn't check. The next morning, she was already up and dressed when I came downstairs. Tight black yoga pants, crop top, hair done. She looked like she was about to hit the gym or someone's bed. Morning, she said casually, pouring herself a cup of coffee. I leaned against the counter, watching her. Where are you going? She glanced over her shoulder, smirking. Out. Out where? Emily sipped her coffee, staring at me over the rim of the mug. Why do you care? I clenched my jaw. Because you live here. Her eyes flickered with amusement. For now. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Are you seriously doing this? You're just flaunting it. She shrugged, setting the cup down. I told you last night, Matt. If you don't like it, leave. I laughed bitterly. You'd love that, wouldn't you? Emily leaned in, her lips brushing against my ear. I think you'd love it more, she whispered. I grabbed her arm, stopping her as she pulled away. She didn't flinch. You think this is funny? I growled. Her eyes locked onto mine, cold and unbothered. I think you're too scared to do anything about it. I tightened my grip. Don't test me, Emily. She smiled sweetly, leaning in so close her breath brushed against my skin. Or what? I let go. She laughed softly, brushing past me toward the door. See you tonight, she called over her shoulder. The door slammed behind her, leaving me alone with the sound of my own pulse pounding in my ears. By noon, I decided I was done waiting for Emily to burn it all down. If she wanted to play games, I'd play too. I drove to Jason's house. I didn't text, didn't call, just knocked. Jason answered, his face paling the second he saw me standing on his porch. Matt, let me in, I said flatly. He hesitated. I'm not here to kick your ass, I added, stepping forward until he had no choice but to let me through the door. Jason shut it behind me, scratching the back of his neck nervously. Look, man, about the other day. Sit down. I cut him off, nodding toward his couch. Jason sank onto the edge of the cushion, watching me carefully as I paced in front of him. You and Emily, I started, keeping my voice even. How long has it been going on? Jason shifted uncomfortably. Matt, How? Long? His shoulders slumped. A few months, since the summer. I felt my fingers twitch, but I shoved my hands into my pockets, keeping them there. Jason wouldn't be the one to bleed for this. Emily would. Did she come on to you? I asked, already knowing the answer. Jason nodded slowly. Yeah, she said you were into it. I laughed darkly, shaking my head. Of course she did. Jason rubbed his hands over his face. Isviar. Mom, I didn't know she was... She's a liar. I interrupted. You're not the first, Jason, and you won't be the last. He looked up confused. What are you saying? I leaned in, staring him dead in the eye. I'm saying she's still doing it, I growled. And I want you to help me catch her. Jason blinked, clearly caught off guard. You want me to what? I smiled coldly. She's already burning this marriage down, I said calmly. I just want to be the one holding the match when it goes up in flames. Jason looked at me like I'd lost my damn mind. Matt, I don't know, man, he stammered, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm already in deep shit with Laura. She'd kill me if she found out I was still involved in this. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You're already fucked, Jason. You think Emily's just going to stop? You were convenient, that's all. She'll find someone else next week, and you'll still be the guy who helped her blow up her marriage. He stayed quiet, eyes glued to the floor. Unless, I added, stepping closer, you help me put an end to this. Make it worth something. Jason hesitated. What exactly are you asking me to do? I grinned. Just keep playing along. Let her think you're still interested. And when the time's right, I'll handle the rest. Jason swallowed hard, nodding slowly. All right, fine. But if this blows up, it already has, I interrupted. Now you just get to decide which side of the explosion you're standing on. That night, Emily came home late. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through the channels, pretending I hadn't been waiting for her. She breezed through the front door, dropping her purse on the counter like she hadn't just been out fucking around. Late night, I said casually, not bothering to look up. Emily smirked, kicking off her heels. Yeah, I had a drink with Amanda after yoga. I smiled faintly. Lie. She wasn't with Amanda. Jason texted me 2 hours ago. She'd been at his place, standing in his kitchen, making herself at home like she owned the place. I stood, stretching. Good. You two need to catch up more. Emily watched me carefully. You're not mad? I shook my head, stepping toward her. Why would I be mad? Her eyes narrowed slightly, sensing something beneath the surface. I leaned in, brushing her hair back with my fingers. You can do whatever you want, babe. Emily's lips parted slightly, but she didn't say anything. Not yet, but I could feel the shift, the uncertainty creeping in. Good. Let her wonder. Over the next few days, Jason played his part perfectly. Emily kept texting him, arranging little visits during her supposed gym trips. Jason told me every detail. When she came over, what she wore, how long she stayed. I let it build. By the weekend, I had everything I needed. Saturday night, Emily told me she was heading to Amanda's for wine night. I smiled, kissed her on the cheek, and watched her drive off. 10 minutes later, I was pulling into Jason's driveway. His porch light flicked on as I stepped out of the car. Jason answered the door, nodding toward the living room. She's upstairs, he muttered. I walked in, calm and steady, like I belonged there. Emily's voice drifted down from the second floor. Jason, do you have more of that red wine? I'm almost. She froze at the top of the stairs, eyes locking onto mine. Her smile faded instantly. Matt, she said, voice thin, what are you doing here? I slipped my hands into my pockets, staring up at her. You left your phone at home. I lied smoothly. Thought you might need it. Emily swallowed hard, glancing toward Jason like he might have an answer. He didn't. I held up her phone, watching her face drain of color. Funny, I said quietly. Your calendar says Amanda's out of town this weekend. Silence. Emily took a slow step down the stairs, carefully choosing her words. Matt, I can explain. I smiled coldly. I'm sure you can. Jason hovered awkwardly behind me, shifting nervously. I'll, give you two a minute, he muttered, disappearing into the kitchen. Emily reached the bottom step, standing inches away from me. Her eyes flicked to the door. I stepped between her and the exit. We're past running, Emily, I said, voice calm but firm. Her chin lifted defiantly. What now? You gonna yell at me? Break things? I chuckled darkly. No, I'm just here to watch you dig the hole deeper. She crossed her arms, glaring. You think I'm scared of you? I met her gaze, unblinking. You should be. Emily's smirk faltered, but she held her ground. I don't know what you think you're doing, she said, her voice sharp. But this little stalker act is pathetic. I leaned against the wall, casually blocking the front door with my body. You're calling me pathetic? I laughed quietly, shaking my head. You've been sneaking around with Jason like some horny teenager, and somehow I'm the problem? She rolled her eyes, brushing past me toward the kitchen. This is childish, Matt. You could have just asked instead of playing detective. I followed her slowly, watching as she poured herself another glass of wine, like we were having a casual conversation. Asked. I repeated. Emily, I caught you naked with him last week. She sipped the wine, tilting her head. And yet here we are, still married. Guess that means you're not leaving, right? I clenched my jaw, feeling that familiar rage bubbling beneath the surface. She thought she could get away with it. She thought I wouldn't have the balls to do anything. Not this time. I grabbed the wine glass from her hand, setting it down on the counter with a loud clink. Emily blinked, caught off guard. Matt! Shut up. I cut her off, stepping closer until she was pressed against the counter. Her breath hitched, but she didn't look away. I could see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes now. That crack in the facade. You think you can walk all over me? I growled, my hands gripping the edge of the counter on either side of her. Bring Jason into my house, lie to my face, and still sleep under my roof? Emily's lips curled into a shaky smirk, but her voice wasn't as steady as before. Maybe if you'd been more of a husband, I wouldn't have needed someone else. My fist slammed into the counter next to her hip, rattling the glass. She jumped, eyes widening for a split second before she masked it with that same smug expression. But I saw it. She was rattled. Careful, Matt, she whispered. You're starting to sound a little threatening. I leaned in until my lips brushed her ear. I'm not threatening, I murmured. I'm promising. She swallowed, shifting against the counter, but I didn't move. I let the silence stretch between us, thick and heavy, until she finally spoke. So, what now? She asked softly. I pulled back, smirking. Now, I let you destroy yourself. Her brow furrowed. What the hell does that mean? I grabbed my phone, unlocking it with a swipe of my thumb. A video popped up. Jason's living room, clear as day. Emily's voice echoed through the speakers, laughing, flirting, then moaning. Her eyes widened in horror. You! I set up a camera, I said calmly, holding the screen out for her to see. Just in case you tried this shit again. Her face turned pale. Matt, you wouldn't... Oh, I would... I smiled faintly. In fact, I already sent a copy to Jason's wife. I'm sure she'll love to hear what you've been up to. Emily's eyes flashed with panic, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. Matt, please. I stepped away, walking toward the door. You wanted to play this game, I called over my shoulder. Now you get to lose. Emily didn't chase after me this time. She just stood there, staring at the video like it might somehow erase itself. It wouldn't. I didn't hear from Emily for the rest of the night. I half expected her to blow up my phone with threats or apologies, but she stayed quiet, probably still processing the fact that her little secret wasn't so secret anymore. Jason, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. Laura, his wife, called me around noon the next day. Her voice was ice cold. Thank you for sending that, Matt. I would have never known. I didn't bother pretending to be sympathetic. I figured you deserved to see it for yourself. She was quiet for a moment. He's out of the house. Packed his shit this morning. I leaned back in my chair, watching the ceiling fan spin lazily above me. I'm glad, I said simply. Laura's voice softened, but there was still steel behind it. Emily's next, isn't she? I smiled faintly. Oh yeah, Laura chuckled darkly. Good. I'd say I feel bad for her, but I really don't. Don't, I replied. She knew exactly what she was doing. By the time we hung up, I could practically picture Jason dragging his bags to his car, tail tucked between his legs. One down, one to go. Emily finally came home late that night. I was sitting in the living room, sipping whiskey, when the door creaked open. She stepped inside cautiously, like she wasn't sure what kind of war zone she was walking into. I didn't look up. She hovered near the entrance, clutching her purse tightly. Matt, she started, her voice softer now. I took a slow sip, letting the silence stretch until she shifted uncomfortably. I went to Jason's, she admitted. Laura kicked him out. I smirked behind the glass. I know. Emily flinched. You didn't have to do that. I finally looked at her, eyes locking onto hers. You didn't have to fuck him, I replied coldly. She clenched her jaw, but I could see the cracks forming. For once, Emily didn't have a comeback. She walked into the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine with shaking hands. You really sent her the video, she muttered, more to herself than to me. Yeah. I set the glass down with a loud clink. And you should probably start packing too. Her hand froze halfway to her lips. Packing. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, staring her down. You're leaving, Emily. You can pack your shit tonight. or I'll do it for you tomorrow. She blinked, processing the words. You're serious. I smiled faintly. Dead serious. Emily's lips tightened. You can't just kick me out, Matt. This is my house, too. I laughed under my breath, shaking my head. Not anymore. Her eyes narrowed. I'll bleed you dry in the divorce. I stood slowly, stepping right into her space until our noses almost touched. I've already spoken to the best lawyer in town, I whispered. And guess what? Judges don't like cheating wives. Her face paled. You think you're untouchable, I continued. But you forgot. I know everything about you. Every secret, every lie. You won't walk away with shit. Emily swallowed hard, stepping back. You're bluffing, she whispered. I smirked. Try me. She stared at me, heart pounding so loud I could practically hear it. But she didn't argue. She turned on her heel, storming upstairs without another word. I sat back down, swirling the whiskey in my glass, listening to her stomp around like she was punishing me. Let her rage. It wouldn't change a damn thing. Emily didn't come downstairs for hours. I heard her footsteps pacing back and forth, drawers slamming shut, but I didn't bother checking. Let her tear the place apart if it made her feel better. By midnight, she finally emerged. She stood at the top of the stairs, suitcase in hand, eyes burning holes into the back of my head as I sat on the couch watching TV. You're really doing this, she said quietly, her voice trembling. I muted the TV, tilting my head toward her. Yeah, I replied without looking away from the screen. Emily's grip tightened around the handle. And where the fuck am I supposed to go, Matt? I shrugged. Jason's got a motel room. Maybe you two can split the cost. Her face twisted with anger. You're such an asshole. I finally turned to look at her, smiling faintly. I learned from the best. Emily stomped down the stairs, dragging the suitcase behind her. She paused at the door, glancing back like she was waiting for me to stop her. I didn't. She lingered there, eyes flicking between me and the doorknob. This isn't over, she muttered. I leaned back, resting my arm along the back of the couch. Oh, it's over, Emily, I said calmly. You're just the last one to realize it. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't argue. She pulled the door open and stepped out into the cold night without another word. The silence she left behind was deafening. I sat there for a long time, staring at the door like I expected her to come storming back in, demanding I take her back. But the longer I sat, the more I realized something. I didn't care if she did. I poured another drink and let the weight of it all settle in. It felt good. By the next morning, word spread fast. Kyle texted me around noon. Kyle, Emily's at Amanda's. Guess she's crashing there for now. I smiled at the screen. Me? Figures. Amanda always liked picking up strays. Kyle, you really kicked her out? Me, yep. Kyle, damn. Remind me not to piss you off. I chuckled, tossing the phone onto the counter. Let Emily play victim at Amanda's. She could whine and cry all she wanted, but everyone knew the truth now. She wasn't the wronged wife. She was just the woman who bet everything on Jason and lost. A week passed. Emily tried calling twice. I didn't answer. By Friday, she showed up unannounced, standing on the porch like she thought I'd magically let her back in. I opened the door, leaning against the frame. Forget something? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Emily crossed her arms, clearly trying to look composed. I want the rest of my stuff, she said coldly. I nodded. I'll box it up. Her eyes narrowed. I can do it myself. I smirked. Not happening. She shifted on her feet, biting the inside of her cheek. You're really not going to let me in? She asked, tilting her head. I met her gaze, unflinching. No. Emily's breath hitched, but she masked it with a bitter smile. Fine. Be petty, she muttered, turning back toward her car. I'll see you in court. I laughed softly, loud enough for her to hear. Looking forward to it. Emily didn't take the rejection well. By Monday, I got the first message from her lawyer. Nothing serious, just the usual divorce posturing. Demands for assets, threats about spousal support. I expected it. I also knew it wouldn't hold up. I kept everything, every text, every call, the video from Jason's house. Judges weren't known for sympathy when the wife got caught screwing the neighbor. Emily thought she could scare me. She'd forgotten who she married. That evening, Kyle stopped by with a six-pack. Figured you could use this, he said, stepping inside. I smirked. Planning on staying for the fireworks? Kyle laughed, dropping onto the couch. Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world. Amanda said Emily's been losing her mind at their place. She's got nowhere else to go. I cracked open a beer, taking a long sip. Good? Let her stew. Kyle stretched out, propping his feet on the coffee table. You know she's going to come crawling back eventually, right? He asked casually. I grinned, shaking my head. She can crawl all she wants. I'm not opening the door. Kyle raised his bottle. Cheers to that. The next day, Emily texted again. Emily, we need to talk. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Me? I don't think we do. Her reply came fast. Emily, you can't just ignore me forever. Me? Watch me. She didn't text again. By Friday, Amanda texted. Amanda, can you please get her out of my house? I laughed, shaking my head. Me? Not my problem. Amanda, she's driving me crazy, Matt. I mean it. Me? I didn't invite her. Amanda didn't respond. Let her deal with it. Emily had burned bridges everywhere else. Amanda was the last person willing to tolerate her. For now. Later that night, I caught Emily parked down the street, sitting in her car. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching her headlights flicker in the dark. She wasn't bold enough to come to the door. She just sat there, waiting. I let her. I turned off the porch light and walked back inside. Let her soak in the silence. Emily's car was gone by morning. I didn't see her again for 2 weeks. Kyle kept me updated, though. Apparently, Amanda finally kicked her out after one too many meltdowns. Emily had burned through whatever pity she had left. She wasn't anyone's problem now, except her own. One afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Can we meet? I knew it was her. I almost ignored it. Almost. Me where? Unknown. The coffee shop by Maine. Tomorrow morning. Me fine. I wasn't doing it for closure. I just wanted to see how much further she could fall. Emily was already sitting at the corner table when I arrived. She looked worn out, hair pulled back in a loose bun, dark circles under her eyes. Nothing like the smug, self-satisfied woman I caught with Jason. She tried to smile as I sat down. Hey, she said softly. I didn't respond, just stared at her, waiting. Emily fidgeted with her cup, chewing her lip. I'm sorry, Matt. I leaned back, arms crossed. For what? Exactly. She swallowed, eyes flicking to the window. For everything. Jason, the lying, all of it. I fucked up. I smirked. Yeah, you did. Emily's eyes darted back to mine, searching for any sign of weakness. She didn't find any. I thought maybe we could try again, she said quietly, her voice almost hopeful. I could come home, and I held up a hand, cutting her off. Emily, I said, leaning forward until she couldn't look away. There's no home for you to come back to. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I smiled coldly. I don't love you. I don't even hate you. You're just irrelevant now. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Matt, please, she whispered, gripping the edge of the table. I stood, dropping a few bucks next to her cup. For the coffee, I said flatly. I turned and walked out without another word. Emily didn't chase after me this time. She just sat there, staring at the empty seat across from her, finally realizing she'd lost the only thing she couldn't replace. Thank you for listening the story to the end. Write your thoughts about it in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe. See you in the next videos.